Welcome to today's webinar, How to Use Advanced Business Intelligence Tactics to Make Data-Driven Decisions, presented by AssetWorks. I'm Jay Cohen, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I encourage you to ask questions during the webinar at any point, and we will try to address them all. However, if we do not get to yours, don't worry, you will be contacted by email with a response after the event. Our presenter today is Mark Knight. Mark Knight brings over 28 years fleet experience to AssetWorks and serves as AssetWorks Senior Industry Advisor, helping customers get the most out of their fleet system. Mark is a former fleet manager and fleet industry consultant and is a NAFA CAFM. Mark's expertise includes replacement planning and funding, asset management, fleet data stewardship and coding, outsourcing, and operations assessments. Now, I'll hand the presentation over to Mark.
Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. In today's webinar, we're going to really talk a little bit about the challenges that everyone's facing with all the data that's available today and how that data gets processed so we can utilize it. And then we're going to introduce you to the AssetWorks Asset Analytics Platform, which is a new solution that we have just announced to address these needs in the market. So to begin with, let's just talk a little bit about today's analytics. There is so much data coming not only from your fleet management system, but from your vendors, suppliers, even your other internal systems like your HR or purchasing system. That data is a lot to keep up with. And the fleet industry isn't the only industry that's experiencing this. This is a global phenomenon with all the connected computers and systems and APIs that exist today. So as a result of that, one of the fastest and the most emerging IT segments is the data scientist and the data analyst, big word. And those are some of the fastest growing jobs in the market today, because people realize that in order to manage all this data, I'm going to need some special expertise. I'm going to need people knowledgeable in how to build a model, as shown there on the right, as well as how to be able to turn that data into useful information so that we can gain insights from the data. And so if you look at today's current landscape, at the center, you've got your fleet application, fleet focus, or another application. Between that and the user, there's a layer of APIs that collect data either from a third party, such as on the left examples, or from some device or some other means of collecting the data. That all gets pushed into this single application database, from which in today's world we can do what's called descriptive analytics, basically what has happened. We can use a variety of tools from dashboards to reporting applications in order to view that data. But the challenge is, again, data is everywhere. You've got your telematics data, you've got your ERP data, maybe you've outsourced part of your business and now you're collecting data from the vendor. You've got maybe one of the other AssetWorks products, your fuel systems. All of these things are generating data. And how do you get this into the hands of your users and across the organization? How do we can we influence what the workshop's doing? Can we pass data up to our management team? And can our analysts get to that data so that we can report on it? What the future is going to look like, it's going to be focused around an API platform where you have multiple data sources that are out there. Again, we talked about each of those, as well as you might have some what's called unstructured data. Think of the dashboard cams that exist today and the data that comes from there. It might be written data. It might be just data on the internet. Weather data might be important. Additionally, telematics. All this is going to converge into this API platform, upon which then we can now use a variety of different tools to expand our analysis beyond descriptive to get into prescriptive analytics as well as predictive analytics. So in support of that future, AssetWorks has developed the Asset Analytics Platform. During our academy, a week before, at the beginning of the month, we unveiled the product and gave some demonstrations and well as opportunity for users to touch it. What this application is, it's a cloud-based application that aggregates data from a variety of sources and massages and transforms that data into data sets that are easy to report on. And because we recognize that many of our customers don't have the analysts or the expertise in hand to mine the data and report on it, we've developed some standard content with standard KPIs that users can, out of the box, run without having to do any setup or configuration on their end, as well as we also are offering self-service reporting to these data sets, which I'll talk about a little later. So how the platform came about, this was actually an initiative that we started just prior to COVID. We did a survey in 2020 of many of our customers, and what came back from them as, the most important measures that they found were utilization, PM compliance, availability, labor productivity, and life to date or age of an asset. Based on that, we put together the design for the platform and went out and sought customers to help participate in this design. And so we formed a special interest group at the end of Q2 last year. And in July, we started meeting with this group. And we started to build out the platform, adding different reports, discussing use cases, talking about how data is collected, and incorporating all that into our design. We stood up test environments in December, and in this last, since December up until the academy, we've been working with the customers to get that data up and get them into a production mode. And then, like I said, we officially launched this at the academy this year. And the special interest group plays a really important role in our development of any new product. Again, we seek out our customers to participate, and really what we want to know is from them is what should this product do, and who are you going to have as users, and talk through that. That helps us identify functionality and personas. We also get to talk about data collection and data accuracy and data stewardship with the group, identifying how can we improve that. And what came out of that was one of the things we need is some standardization. Again, we met on a regular basis. We would show new product to them, and they would give us feedback. And like I said, they're the first to have the production environments set up. And just to introduce our special interest group, you'll see it's a diverse group of our customers. We've got a couple different utilities. We've got a large city with a large, diverse municipal fleet. We've got an EAM customer that doesn't have any rolling stock, but uses our software to maintain their parks, facilities, and equipment. Bonneville represents a federal fleet. We've got a mix of M5 and EAM. So it's a really nice, good, diverse group that gave us an opportunity to see the different perspectives to help in this design. So what is the platform? The platform actually exists in the cloud, and it's a combination of a variety of different cloud-based tools. We start with the raw data that's in your in Fleet Focus, M5, FA, EAM, CAM. We push that data through APIs into just what was called a data lake. It's just raw data out in a natural form that has no manipulation. It is what it is. We use a tool, though, called Databricks to manipulate that data and transform that raw data into individual data sets. And the data sets are focused on a particular subject. That makes it easy for us to develop reports around because we have all the data we need within one set. Connected to those excuse me, customer warehouses, using Azure Directory, we overlay the Azure analysis services on top of those data warehouses, and we connect through the services to the data, either using the standard content in the platform developed with Power BI, or the user has direct access through the analytics services to the individual data sets. When a user signs up to the platform, we're going to authenticate them. This authentication does a couple of things. One, it assigns a user to a particular customer. So you can the data right now, although it's in the cloud, is segmented by customer. Each customer has their own data warehouse with their own data sets. So when a new customer is created, they only go into a particular data set. It's also how we determine whether or not the user is going to have direct access into the data. And by accepting the invitation, when the user logs in the future, it's a single sign-on. They've been authenticated based on their Windows credentials, and that then allows the user just to click and be right into the portal. Now, I mentioned the data sets, and in the data sets combine fact information. Facts are, the things that we're going to analyze: transactions, some event, some action that occurred, something that happens on a regular basis that we can measure and describe. Around that fact, though, are dimensions, and these are the things that help us in determining, when, where, what, why, and how that data is structured and can be grouped and reported on. So if you think of a work order, at the center, you've got your work order header record. Around that record, we've got the information of which asset it is, what the reasons are, who the department is, what type of asset it was, when was this done. The work order itself has the facts, and those dimensions are different ways that we can sort, filter, group the data. But when we start thinking of the facts, it's fairly straightforward. On the labor side, we've got who is the technician, that's a dimension. But then we have when do they log in and out, what was the total cost, what type of job was it on, was it direct or indirect. Similarly with parts, what was the part, what was its cost, what was the quantity, was it in stock or out of stock. And then commercial costs, as well as any detail captured there. Those represent the facts. Excuse me. So in our initial product release, and going back to the survey results from our users, we identified 5 data sets that we constructed as part of the initial release. One around utilization, again, one around age and life-to-date history, one focused on PMs and the completion of the PMs, one around availability of assets, when did they start, when did they end, what was the downtime, and then a group around productivity. Who was the technician, what was the direct labor charges and the indirect transactions. As part of this project, though, however, we added in 2 additional data sets that were not part of our original plan. One is telematics, and I'll show how we've connected to our telematics cloud. And the other is energy. We really needed that to do total cost of ownership. That's an important component. And so we added in the various products. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump through. I unfortunately can't do a live demo based on the setup, but I am going to walk you through a series of slides and describe what the how the platform looks and some of the functionality that's available in there. So to start, when a user logs in, they're going to get the single sign-on. Will take them directly to their home page. Their home page begins with showing their favorite dashboards. And you'll see there's a thumbnail for each different dashboard. We have an image, so it's easy, if you can't remember the name of it, you maybe remember how it looks. And we also have a description to help understand, what's the purpose of this dashboard. Additionally, you're going to see ratings there. And we'll talk about how reports can be rated and viewed. I showed that work order data. So within the we take that work order set, and you'll see here we've got a list of work orders and tasks. This is data that we've pulled from Fleet Focus and summarized it, aggregated it, transformed it, all the things we have to do. And you'll see here the raw data, the work orders itself. By clicking on a work order, I can view the task. I can click up and view then the individual labor charges or commercial charges, for a particular work order or over time. These table queries allow us to look at those data sets and view all the data that's in there. And we use this to help validate, data loading correctly and data accuracy. That same work order data, though, can be used here to give me a maintenance summary for the last 12 months. So starting from today, going back 12 months, we display here labor, parts, and commercial costs in the time series graph in the upper right. On the upper left, which is common in most of the dashboards, is our stats or metrics section. And here we take key measures, key identifiers, and just display the measure, making it easy for the user to not have to search through a series of graphs or summarize data. And then typically our dashboards will have some additional supporting visualizations. In this case, we have a heat map based on various job reasons, showing me which job reasons are the most common. In this case, it's by the fleet or by the customer has identified the issues. And then on the right-hand side, we do a table grid, which is another type of visualization, but where we're summarizing the data by system code to sort of highlight which parts of the vehicles are being worked on the most. Again, all of this is coming out of that raw work order data that we pulled right from Fleet Focus. This next image here shows one of the built-in Power BI functions. I can click on one of the corners of the visualizations, and that then creates a full screen view of the data. So I can blow it up and look at it from a larger perspective. I also have the ability to add a table to this view as well. And you see here, I'm hovering over one of the months and seeing the measures for that particular month. And then on the other side, I also have each month with their total amounts. Another example here is from one of our utilization dashboards. And here we've got a series of pie graphs, table charts, and scatter plots. You'll see controls here. When we look at utilization, one of the things we look at is both miles, as shown here, and then hours, operating hours. So we can flip back and forth between the overall, measuring assets that are measured in miles versus viewing assets that are measured in hours. Another example here of utilization, just again showing a summary. In this case, I'm looking at a particular asset. In the upper left-hand corner, there's a drop-down where I can find and select a asset, and then the resulting information is data for that asset. And in this case, again, I'm looking at distance or miles, kilometers, and I can then flip and look at time for that same asset. Very easy to navigate through and allows it simple for users to drill in without having to take a lot extra clicks. Here's another example of one of our dashboards. This is looking at labor productivity. Now, this dashboard's a little interesting. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that I'm displaying the last month. So that time series at the top, shows the productivity on each day, the direct and indirect hours that were worked over the last month. If I want, I can drill into the last week and see how that time varies. Now, you'll notice on the far right-hand side, we've got today. So we're capturing some live data. It's early in the day, so we don't have a lot of work orders complete, but we have started to collect data today. Now, if I wanted to look into more, say, excuse me, about yesterday, I can, in this view, it shows me the number of hours or when transactions were posted for both direct and indirect time throughout the course of the day. And I can see, where my most activity is, where I have a little bit of activity, during breaks or between shifts, for example. I'm also over here, I'm hovering on one of the particular dots in the scatter plot to view that particular asset's information. Now, one thing you can do from that is actually click on that asset, and then that will actually work as a cross filter and can adjust these graphs. I'm sorry, not an asset, that's a technician. This is another one, again, going back to our cost summary, and you see the energy costs are included here, which is why we added those. Now, and this is just some basic examples of some additional filtering and capabilities that, in this case, I clicked on the labor on the legend on the time series at the top, and it just highlights that particular row. And similarly, I can do this down in the bar graph. I can click on the legend in the bar graph, and that'll then highlight that particular measure. Got jumped out of place, excuse me. Okay, so I clicked on that. Now I'm on my operating cost summary. And again, show that total, select down to that. And again, I can also hover over any one of the periods. And when I hover over one of the periods and click on a particular period, it's going to filter the rest of the screen to show me just information for that period, the breakdown of my labor, parts and commercial costs, my energy, as well as the activity that took place in that period. We also have features that include, in this case, cross filtering, again, where I can click on a particular column, and that column then filters out that day's events or activities, and again, allows me to drill into some of the detail. Similarly, I could find an asset on the PMs not completed list, click on that, and that would then also modify the other visualizations. One of the things we added, though, to make it easy for users without having to know Power BI or how to write SQL, we've added a filtering tool to our platform. And with that filtering tool, I can add a new filter. I can select a particular one of the fields that we want to filter on. In this case, I'm going to pick make. Then I'm going to use an operator. How do I want to select this data? I'm going to use an in, and then I'm going to select from the raw data 3 different vendors, Ford, Dodge, and Chevy, just by selecting them off of the drop-down list, or just typing in the name if I know it. Once that's complete, I just simply add that to my list, and that will apply then the filter to the graph. You'll notice that the graph has changed, again, because we're just focusing on those assets that are being filtered. I can also save that filter. I can name it. I can set that up as a default. And when I set that up as a default, that filter will automatically be applied anytime I click that thumbnail. If it's not a default, I can just pick from one of the filters that I've previously built, and then that filter will be applied. And then we also have the ability here, when the filters are applied, you'll see in the lower right-hand corner, the filter icon now shows that it has a filter on it, and so that the user knows that that data is being filtered. Additionally, we have a report rating functionality. In the upper right-hand corner of every visualization, there is the ability to rate them. The user just simply clicks the rate icon. It pops up with this dialog box. You can give 1 to 5 stars, as well as leave a comment. Similar to maybe how you do a purchase or update, comment on your Uber driver. You're allowed to, give us feedback through this process. When a report is rated, you'll see in the middle there the view rating. When I could click on that, what it'll do is it'll bring up the ratings. It'll show me the overall scores as well as comments from different users. Now, what's important to know about this, why each customer has their own database, and that data is not being shared. These ratings are shared across the customer base to help other customers, as well as AssetWorks, continuously improve the product. And lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about telematics. Our telematics cloud, so any customers that have third-party telematics and are pushing that data into our telematics cloud, which is then pushed into Fleet Focus, we were able to extract that data from the telematics cloud and join it very easily into the platform. This is an example of us using location data and key on, key off to determine when a trip started and when a trip ended. And we can use that information in conjunction with the utilization information to have a much better picture of assets that maybe aren't being used that frequently, but when they are used, they go a lot of miles. So we need to have that dual perspective really to look at utilization. Something else, and just to demonstrate the capabilities that we have, we are able to take those different trips and plot them onto a graph as shown here. So I can selected one of the trips, and it shows me, all right, in this case, it's a static trip in a single location. When the telematics provider can give us key on, key off, we can actually link together a whole series of these to create an actual travel map for that particular user or that particular asset. So that's a summary of the functionality that's in the application. I just want to talk a little bit about where we're going, and then get into any user questions that you may have. One of the things that has been brought up by many of our customers is, can I write my own reporting? How can I access this data to build a report that meets my specific needs? One of the challenges when you write a standard content or a standard metric means that data needs to be organized similarly. Sometimes that doesn't work, and the way you want to look at it is unique to yourself. So you want to be able to write your own reports. You have that ability with the platform. When a user is created, we can designate them as a report reader, so they just have access to the platform, or we can designate them also as a report writer, which give them direct access to the analysis services. They can use any third-party tool, Excel, Tableau, their own Power BI, Click, whatever you have, to analyze that data. You just connect to the AssetWorks Analysis Services data source, and that then presents all the tables that are available that you can view and write against. And again, it's all organized in a very user-friendly fact dimension structure. So if you get to a particular data set, most of the data you need is already there in one place, easy to report on without having to know joining. I mentioned standards. One of the things in working with our special interest group was we needed to standardize many of the fields so that we can build a common report. AssetWorks is, very flexible. We allow you to customize your codes and your setups. However, when you do that, we aren't speaking the same language. And to do good standardized reporting, we need some standards. So we've adopted the VMRS code schemes in places where it matches into some of the functionality that we have within our applications. So for example, we developed a standard for energy, which is actually not part of the VMRS. I'll show that separately. But we're using the VMRS reason codes, for example, the work accomplished codes, status codes, and the system groups and assembly codes. And how do we get then to that standard? What we've done is we've built translation worksheets, and where you have your existing code, we give you the new standard set of codes, and you map your codes to those standards. That then gets set up into the data set. So we have both the standard code and the user code. You can write your own reports against the user code, but we'll write our reports in the portal against the standard code. And that way we all are kind of speaking the same language when it comes to viewing the metrics. I mentioned energy source as a separate separate one. What we found in doing the research on energy types between the fuel companies, APWA, ATA, there is not a good standard out there that's complete with all the various fuel types, as well as allows us to understand, the different power sources. So we put together a standard list of energy types, and as well as we mapped each one of those into a power source, whether it's a BEV for battery electric vehicle or an internal combustion ICE engine. That allows us to do some reporting, particularly when we start to get into our EV transition program. We can now easily identify which assets are BEVs versus ICE or PHEVs, for example. Now, one of the questions that came up at the Academy and I've had from others is, well, I already have the dashboard module. Why do I need this one? And really because there's really two uses for these applications. The current operational dashboards that are embedded within Fleet Focus, those are part of a workflow. Those are near real time, pushing data to a screen that a user is working on to alert them to some condition. Maybe the work orders have been open too long. Maybe I've got a backlog of work to have. But it's a tactical, actionable dashboard or gauge or visualization. Whereas when we start to look at the analytics platform, we're looking more strategically. We're doing a lot of why did things happen? What are the relationships between some of these fields? Can we see trends in the data? And really the user sets between these two are different. Our operational dashboards are really, those are the people working in Fleet Focus on a regular basis, where the analytic dashboard is really designed for your customers, your leadership, your executive boards, what have you, that are running the operation, that want to see things at a high level summarized. So there is a place for both of these as they meet different needs. So as I mentioned, this was a new product released in April. We, like many of our products, we continue to build on them and grow. We do have a roadmap. We actually are working on version 22 one for later this year, where we'll be introducing some additional data sets, particularly around parts and warranty. One of the things that did come up was the ability for customers to manage and maintain the translation and parameters. So we're actually working on a part of the portal where you can upload and maintain and edit any of your translations. And then something that came up very frequently was, all right, if I have direct access to the data, am I able to push one of the reports and publish it within there so that my users can see it? Currently, we do not support that. We are working on that. That is a roadmap item where what we expect is that a customer can write their own report. We would verify the report against the data because it can only use data from the analytics platform that's available there. Won't work with outside systems. And so we would validate it, verify it, and then publish it on behalf of the customer. So we are working through that mechanism and how to do that so that you will have the ability to design your own and put those out there for your own users to use. Lastly, in this era of big data, many of our customers have raised the ability to say analyze all the Ford pickups across the country. What's it cost to manage an F-150? In order to do that, though, we need to consolidate data from multiple customers. So on our roadmap is a shared, what we call the big data environment. This would be something where the customer could opt in. We would load the data from their application into this shared environment. And there we would write a series of dashboards and visualizations that look at the data across the entire AssetWorks customer base. And you'd have the ability to, say, filter it by the type of customer. Is it a commercial or a municipal? And again, look at the data in a broader perspective than we currently have available when you're just looking at your own. So those are things that we're continuously looking to build out as this product goes. Now, if you've been interested in what we're doing today and you'd like to see more, version 22 is available. We do not have an external demo site available yet, but we will have a demo site that you can log into and maneuver around. We just have to work through the single sign-on setup for that. One thing to note too is that the installation of this is actually very straightforward. We need to just deliver some updated table maintenance scripts, as well as then executables or MaxQ packages, depending on whether you're M5 or FAEAM, to basically extract data and then push that into our cloud. Generally, within a month, we should be able to have you connected, have all your legacy data pushed into the cloud, begin reporting on it, and then the interfaces will continuously update that data. So there's really nothing for you to touch. Training is fairly straightforward. As you've seen, there's not a lot to save. And so we can do simple training webinars in a couple hours to update new users. So are there any questions? And I'll go back to Jay and some of the others and see which questions has the audience presented.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Yes, we do have some time left, so let's get right into some of those questions that came in during the presentation. First one for you. How is the data analysis better than what we're currently doing with fleet software dashboards or Excel?
Well, let's start with Excel. To begin with data analysis in Excel, you have to get the data. So you're going to have to create a data source, you're going to have to connect to it, you're going to have to download it, then you're going to have to manipulate and massage that data. With the analytics platform, all of that extraction, transformation, and loading the data so that I can easily report on it is automatic. It's happening in the background through our APIs, where we're pulling the data into our data lake. We then run our transformation scripts, refresh the SQL warehouse, and the customer really doesn't have to worry about the data being out of date or missing some of it that you might have when you're dealing with, say, an Excel. Now, as I mentioned, within the application, these dashboards are different than the current dashboards that are available. And really, one of the reasons we've developed this is to add next generation capability, where much of our legacy functionality, is second or third generation reporting, not current fourth or fifth generation.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification on that. Next question for you. Does the system bring in EV charge data?
Yes, we do. Our EV focus data has been integrated into our products table transactions. So we now have EV transactions, and not only do we have, say, the number of kilowatts that were dispensed and the cost, but we also can capture some information such as when the charger was started, which charger it came from, when the charging ended. So there's some additional data we're capturing off the chargers that's also available within our data sets.
Okay, next question for you, Mark. How frequently is the data refreshed? And would I be looking at live data?
You're looking at near live data. It's actually like in the case, the demo site that I showed the screenshots from, that's being updated every 5 minutes. We have a process, and that update means we're extracting data from Fleet Focus every 5 minutes, pushing it into the data warehouse, and then from there, we on a scheduled basis, we also then do the transformations. One of the things we added to all the graphs and all the visualizations is the date and time the date was last refreshed and the date and time the date was last loaded. So the user has a sense of how frequent and current the data is.
Okay. Another question for you. Can I write my own dashboards?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we are going to allow self-service reporting. Today, you can do it today. What we're going to hopefully support down the road for you is the ability to publish those inside of the application platform. But yes, with the self-service reporting, you can use whatever tool you like to write whatever report you want against that data.
Okay, great. Another question for you. Looks like, does the data come from telematics?
So any of the telematics data that we have attached to the platform now is data that is coming through the AssetWorks Telematics Cloud. So we have APIs in our telematics cloud that connect to most of the commonly used telematics providers. We connect to their APIs as well and pull down whatever information they make available. This includes trip data, latitude and longitude. Also includes engine parameter data, as well as diagnostic trouble codes. So any data that gets pushed into our cloud is in the same environment as the analytics platform. So it's easy for us to read that data. Data that sits outside the cloud, that's going to be a future roadmap item, because we're going to have to write specific APIs to pull the data from those vendors into the analytics platform. So currently, we're only supporting data that is through the Asset Analytics or the Asset Telematics Cloud.
Okay, another question for you, Mark. What is VMRS? What does that stand for?
The Vehicle Maintenance Repair System. This is the American Trucking Association's standard set of codes that have been adopted by not only the trucking industry, but others. Many of the manufacturers use VMRS code. as well as many of the service providers. So it's a standard set of codes that support things like repair reasons. Your system assemblies that create your job codes can all be standardized against that. AssetWorks does include the VMRS code schemes in some of our applications where they match up with the code structures that we have. As part of our starter database. However, many customers rip it out and start on their own.
All right. Next question. The person's asking, they are not hosted, but they want to know if they could still use this.
Yes. Actually, so of that special interest group, 2 are hosted and 3 are on-premise installations. So the MaxQ is configured to talk to the APIs in the cloud and then pushes the data out of the firewall into the cloud. We do not, the settings are inside of Fleet Focus, so it's an outbound exercise. So that helps with network security. We're not exposing an inbound call to pull the data.
Okay. How is this product different from the ad hoc Izenda BI tool currently available within M5?
The product's different from one. We're dealing with a little bit more advanced application with more functionality and better visualizations. There is a place for the Izenda tool for very quick self-service queries of data. However, the dashboard delivery is not ideal. Our platform allows us, as you see, to deliver multiple visualizations at one time and interconnect them for easy analysis. You can have both because there are purposes for the ad hoc tool that is included.
Okay. Next question for you, Mark. Can you build thresholds for automatic alerts in the dashboards?
We are starting to add parameters where a customer can set, say, the minimum amount of utilization to be considered underutilized or the maximum amount. So we are starting to set those. Some of those are on screen, so you can set those for a particular visualization. We do not have automatic alert functionality tied into this yet. That would be a roadmap item for us. But with those user-defined parameters, we will apply those to the reports so that how you measure PM compliance will be the way you measure it, as opposed to how AssetWorks has defined it in a very general place.
Okay, next one for you. We are an on-prem AssetWorks customer. Would we be able to use the Cloud Analytics Platform, and what AssetWorks version would we need to be on?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, yes, if you are not hosted, you can still use the platform. We do require version 21 or higher in order to install the current MaxQ or M5 packages. So, that's about the end of what we are supporting today anyway. So we would encourage you, if you're not there, to upgrade to that. We actually had to upgrade several of the SIG members to 21, and that was that was already planned by them. But we do have that.
Okay. Next one for you. Unlike BGE and PECO, PECO,
yep,
we at ComEd don't have the telematics cloud set up. Can we still utilize reporting from Verizon Connect data?
As I mentioned earlier, we do not have the APIs set up to directly feed into the telematics cloud or into the analytics platform. It is only through the telematics cloud currently. So we may look at something potentially in the future of going there. However, our corporate strategy is to establish the telematics cloud as the base for the telematics data because it's structured the way it needs to be.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for answering all those questions, Mark. That's all the time we have for today. Just want to remind people that if anyone did ask a question that wasn't answered, the AssetWorks team will follow up after the event to answer your question individually. We hope that you all enjoyed today's webinar. And again, I want to thank Mark and AssetWorks for today's presentation. I also want to mention that this webinar will be available on demand on the Government Fleet website, and that's at governmentfleet.com/webinars. Thank you for attending, and we hope you have a great day.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.